Hey everyone, welcome back to Global Bluenosers, the podcast about everyday people around the world whose lives have been shaped by the province of Nova Scotia. I'm your host, Sean Meister, and before we get started, I'd like to actually ask you a huge favor. So, back when I started this show, I didn't think I'd have it in me to actually survive doing a weekly show. I thought it'd be fun and probably would just trail off. I guess I didn't have too much confidence in myself back then. So I didn't really promote myself or the show all that much. I'd sort of put it out there and just let it become what it became. But now that we're well into season two, I've been hearing so many wonderful stories from Nova Scotians around the world who use these conversations to add a much needed weekly dose of Nova Scotia into their lives. So, knowing how important it is to hear from their fellow Global Blue Nosers, I'd love it if you could help me spread the word a little bit more to these homesick Blue Nosers and Blue Nosers by choice. There are a few ways that you can do this. The quickest would be to follow and give a 5-star review right where you're listening to me right now. Another super easy way is to share your favorite episode on social media and tag Global Blue Nosers in the post. You can find us on LinkedIn, Instagram, and Facebook. And the most personal and probably the most impactful way to help spread the word is to share your favorite episode directly with the people in your life who miss Nova Scotia. All right, now let's get to the best part, which is today's guest. Born and raised in Bedford, KaraLynn Lewis is a proud global Bluenoser who now lives in Amsterdam after a stop in London. A graduate of Mount Allison University, KaraLynn is the founder of Partnership Advisory, a boutique consultancy that helps companies build and develop their partnership networks to grow their business. And as you can imagine, since KaraLynn is from Bedford, we'll mention the Chicken Burger restaurant very, very early in this one.
The sun was setting in the west and the birds were singing on every tree, and all nature seemed inclined for rest, but still there was no rest for me. I grieved to leave my native land, I grieved to leave my comrades all, and my parents whom I held so dear, and the bunny lass that I do adore. So farewell to Nova Scotia, the sea-bound coast, let your mountains dark and drear I be, for when I am far away on the briny ocean tops, will you ever heave a sigh or a wish for me? Will you ever heave a sigh or a wish for me? Will you ever heave a sigh or a wish for me?
So, KaraLynn, thank you so much for joining the show today.
Thank you so much for having me. Happy to be here.
So it's kind of neat. We're reconnected. The first time we actually really chatted was in person in Nova Scotia. So it's kind of nice to be able to reconnect and chat. So sitting in Bedford, having a coffee and talking about Nova Scotia is fun. Doing it virtually is a little bit different. As I'm looking out at snow through my window right now, is I'd rather go back to the summer when we first met up. But I appreciate you reconnecting to talk now about Nova Scotia.
Definitely. I'm looking at a similarly gloomy weather outside in Amsterdam here as well. So I feel your pain.
You got to start with talking about weather if it's going to be a Nova Scotia conversation.
Always.
So you just said, you're based there in Amsterdam. So to start the show, maybe you could kind of walk us through your journey of how things started for you and how it got to the point where now I'm talking to you online to where you're in Amsterdam.
Yeah, sure. So we actually met for the first time where I was born and raised. So that's Bedford, Nova Scotia. So I grew up there. My parents actually still live in the house that I spent my whole life growing up in. So I didn't really move too far. My whole family as well is from my parents are Maritimers, let's say. So not necessarily Nova Scotia. My dad's a Cape Bretoner, as was his whole family way back when. And my mom is a Newfoundlander. So not quite Nova Scotia, but she made her way over to the mainland. And yeah, so grew up there and went to Mount Allison University. So skipped the border about 10 minutes over. Still very similar vibe to Nova Scotia, and a lot of Maritimers there as well. So had my undergraduate experience. And then basically right after graduation, I skipped the pond and went over to London. Often a first yeah, destination for people that want to go through Europe. So I thought it's a good gateway in that regard. And I spent 2 years there. I actually know very well Olivia McDonald, who I know is a previous guest of yours. We began our London adventure at the exact same time, actually. And yeah, crazy small world. But I ended up moving after 2 years over to the Netherlands, to Amsterdam, where I am now. My visa expired. I wasn't lucky enough to get it extended. So I skipped the next channel and moved over to mainland Europe, where I've spent the last 7 years. Just a couple months ago, celebrated my 7-year anniversary and ninth being away. So yeah, that's how I ended up here. But get home to Canada or to Nova Scotia at least a couple of times a year, and always in the summer because we have a cottage up your way on the South Shore. Yeah, near Lunenburg. So can't miss a summer.
This is the most Nova Scotia thing that I'm just about of everything you just said. The thing that I clued in on was you said up your way. So I'm curious. Are you do you for me, I've always been curious. People use it in different ways. For me, I'm very directional in my description. So everything it's north. So Halifax is up to Halifax, and Yarmouth is down to Yarmouth. For me, do you describe Nova Scotia in that way in terms of like when you think of up and down and directionally within the province, the way you describe it?
Yeah, it's funny that you mentioned that because I said up your way being on the South Shore, which would probably be down. But the reason why I picture it that way is actually because from the water where our cottage is, I would consider it up. So inland, I guess you could say. So I guess that makes sense. But yeah, definitely a very Nova Scotia expression there.
Yeah,
Creeping out.
whenever someone describes something that way, like I would get called out for it when I was living away. I'd be like, is it up that way or down that way? Or and they're like, that's an interesting way to describe it. And they're like, in relation to what? I'm like, well, where I am right now, or like, but yeah. So I really clued in on that. But to kind of go back, it's one of those things. There's always so many connections. So I love that you and Olivia started the journey together. She was an awesome guest, and she's helping me with the meetup in London, as you can imagine.
Yeah.
But when I think about where you're from in Bedford, and I used to go to Bedford quite a bit as a kid, how would you describe your hometown to someone who doesn't know Bedford? Because like I think people think about like Halifax, HRM, but not the like what it was before it all got amalgamated. So how would you describe your hometown to someone that hasn't really visited there?
Well, I would say it's a traditional stopping place. That's the key word for anybody who's ever passed through Bedford. And it's funny because now I have a Dutch fiance, so bringing him back and giving him the full tour with all of my family, it also gives you the outside view in when you're showing it to everybody, especially somebody who has no understanding or reference of yeah, the things that we take for granted in that sense. So definitely a traditional stopping place. But honestly, I love Bedford so much. Sometimes I ran into a couple of people around Halifax and stuff where Bedford doesn't necessarily get the nicest rap. I don't know. People think everybody's snobby or unfriendly or something. I don't know, but it's definitely not true. But Bedford is honestly such a nice place to grow up. It's as everywhere in Nova Scotia, it's very safe, but the communities are beautiful. It's right by the water. It's very quiet, but still has its own character as well. And that's what I really loved about it because it doesn't feel like a suburb of Halifax. It really has its own history, its own vibe, its own character. And I've always really appreciated that about it. And it reminds me as well. So we have a family friend who is actually a war bride from Belgium. So she's now 95, I believe. She also still lives in Bedford, right on the waterfront, about 5-minute walk from where she first moved as well when she came over in the 1940s, I believe. So she's seen Bedford like from the beginning, basically, or at least from as long as anyone can remember. And it's so interesting to also hear her memories of Bedford as a town, because that was still when the Bedford Highway, I'm pretty sure, was a dirt road. And there was still maybe horses going around. I'm not really sure, but the things that remain the same are the Esquire Motel, where she still goes to eat. Of course, the chicken burger. So you still really have those landmarks of our history as well, which is really cool to see that it is lasting through the years.
So I have to ask, for somebody that grew up there, and this is probably a loaded question, for the chicken burger is such an institution. What are your feelings towards the actual product from the chicken burger as a location in Bedford?
Honestly, I have never eaten another food item other than a chicken burger, fries, and a milkshake, because I would not like, I don't need to have a cheeseburger from the chicken burger, I need to have a chicken burger. But that boiled chicken on that bread, which the it sounds really gross, and I've described this to people before, and they're like, "Are you crazy?" But the water from the chicken kinda soaks into the bread, and it is so good. So yeah, I think the product is fantastic, and it takes a little longer, but tastes a lot better. So again, with the marketing there.
Has your fiance tried it on one of the visits?
He didn't try a chicken burger, but we did get a milkshake, and we've gotten ice cream as well. Now the empire is expanded to Chicken Little and all of that stuff,
Yeah,
but
yeah, yeah. It's
yeah,
growing.
exactly. He was yeah, amazed by the size of the ice cream cones that we can get here or there.
Yeah, yeah. No, we don't want to skimp on our ice cream. That's for
No
sure. So
way.
no, can't.
Especially the moon mist.
Especially the moon mist. Yeah, that's a classic. So, um, before I ask anymore, I do have to ask: your family wasn't affected by the floodings and stuff in Bedford this year, were they? I hope.
Luckily not. They've been pretty lucky actually. So of course Hammond's Plains as well is also very nearby. So that was a scary time watching that from abroad. And then actually I was there as everything was clearing up, but still very real. And yeah, the flooding, we're very high up on a hill.
That's good.
So yeah, but luckily they weren't personally affected. But it's also, especially when you're watching from so far away as I am, it's so hard to see your hometown and places special, and see that the community, what they go through when these types of disasters happen. But also heartwarming to see everybody come together as a community and support each other as well. So that's really nice to see.
Yeah, I find those topics are really interesting to talk to expats because it feels like we've had nothing. We've had a rough few years in Nova Scotia
Big
uh,
time.
for things that were very not Nova Scotia things to have happen, all the way back to the mass shooting and through to the fires and everything. So yeah, for you, you say it's hard but inspiring at the same time. Like how does that feel, just sort of in the day to day, as someone being away and watching stuff from home? Like how does that impact you?
Yeah, it's crazy because I think sometimes people don't necessarily know, or something happens in Canada and they think, okay, that applies to everybody. But when you're from a smaller community that's a little bit more tight knit, it just really becomes real because it is so close to home. So, because you have that strong affinity to that community, it feels like you're right there having it happen to you with them. But then at the same time, when you're away, you're so out of control because you can't see what's going on, you can't maybe get in touch with people. I think it might have been, I can't remember which disaster it was from. It must, or maybe it was a hurricane, one of them. But I tried to call home and my parents' landline was not working, and I thought, oh my goodness, even if the landline, even if the power is out, you can still get the landline, and I couldn't get them, and I was freaking out. So yeah, one of the hard parts of being abroad is that you just don't have that easy access of dropping over when these things gonna happen.
Yeah, and I just in a previous conversation I had, I think it was like last week or so, we were talking about just how everyone in Nova Scotia is like 2 degrees of separation. It seems like we all know each other in some. So like
Yeah.
and that's, I feel like that's been my common experience of talking to people away, is even when their families weren't impacted, it's like in before they knew it, they were getting a call or a text about, oh, but so and so like their home got
Exactly.
affected or their family was. So it's like it's almost like you can't even create that separation because eventually it's like, oh yeah, the neighbor or a family friend or somebody gets affected. So like that, it's the strength and also a weakness for that side of things.
Oh, definitely. If it happens to one person, it happens to all of us. And you can really, you can picture every different location and all that sort of stuff. So, absolutely. But that also goes for the other side as well, the support that is received and the love that goes out to everybody in those moments, too.
Yeah, definitely. So, all right. So I wanted to go now to a little bit dig in a little bit more on your journey and sort of becoming an expat and everything like that. So your first step out was going to Mount Allison, which it's a lot of Nova Scotians will jump over and do university there, similarly to how people jump over and do like university in Nova Scotia from New Brunswick. Is sort of like that first test to be away from home and
Exactly. Yeah.
everything like
That's
that.
exactly what it was.
So I was gonna is that what it was all about for you? Was to kind of get that like sort of that first experience, that test of being able to be far away from home, but not super far away from home?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, there was a lot of things that went into that decision. And originally I was actually going to go to Memorial in Newfoundland where I have family. And on the day that I had to confirm my deposit for my residence fees, my heart spoke to me and said, "No, you're going to Mount A," which is really weird, but it worked out. I can't imagine it any other way. Honestly, I had a life-changing experience at Mount A, honestly, really found my people, found myself, and I think it put me on the right path, I think. But exactly, and I think the reason why, to spread your wings and go over the border, it's in no way to get away from what is there, but I think it's very important, especially when you're from a smaller place like Nova Scotia, to get a little bit of perspective, to go outside and explore, as a lot of these global blue nosers that you've talked to have done. Yeah, it's not necessarily that you're missing something at home, but getting that outside perspective and then also bringing it back enriches the what we have as a smaller place.
Yeah, I think that is always one of those things with Nova Scotia is like, we always have to preface it. It's weird with Nova Scotia because of how close and connected and everything we are. Is like it's not bad to want to go out and explore the world. It's just like it's just part of some people want to have that experience, and you're not saying anything bad about Nova Scotia. I always felt really guilty about that when I left because like I'd come home and even if people didn't mean it, like sometimes they'd talk to me. I was like, well, I don't dislike it here. I wanted to
Yeah, yeah,
see.
yeah.
I just wanted to see out there.
Yeah, it's funny because sometimes it can make people feel offensive sorry, defensive. And I noticed that a lot when I came back. I guess it would have been in the early years after moving to Europe, is that people expect you to have a chip on your shoulder when you leave. And so therefore they spend a lot of time saying, "Oh, but we have this here, and why would you need to go there to get this because we have it here?" But actually, it's not in any way taking away from what Nova Scotia does have, and actually a lot of times makes you appreciate it even more. Because Nova Scotia does have those special things that aren't found other places, but at the same time has a lot of things that are found other places. So there's never a better or worse. It's just different. And yeah, there's lots of places to explore. So
Yeah, it's so. I mean, that's so well said, and it's like I think so important to reinforce. It's not about a comparison. Like I think
never.
that was the thing that I had the same sort of conversations when I was living away and coming home, and people making little comments about when I was living in Alberta and stuff like that, and be like, yeah, it's not this. This thing in Alberta compared to this thing in Nova Scotia, that's not what I'm doing. It's just like I just want to see what this is like out here
Yeah.
and how that changes my perspectives and things like that. But I mean, at the end of the day, I'm gonna go home and see all the great things about home.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a weird little thing about us that sort of the undertone at times of how we can talk about folks that have left. That can be tough.
Yeah. I think it comes from a place of pride and maybe also a little bit of a history of being like a have not province. Although I have to say that, especially in recent years, like coming home, also as an adult, because I've never lived like I'm from Bedford, from Halifax, and I went out downtown and did all the stuff when I was a student, but I've never lived in Halifax as an adult. And even though I am, living my best life somewhere else, when I come home, I am living a best life there. Like, for example, my sister is a adult who lives in Halifax. My best friend, many of my Mount A friends as well live there, and I just have so much fun. They're up to such interesting things. Their lifestyle is great, and I think it's so nice to see people who I know and love who have similar lifestyles to me in a sense,
Hmm.
but they are really maxing out what Nova Scotia has to offer, which is really cool. At least in Halifax. Most of my friends live in Halifax, I have to say.
Yeah.
Little biased in that sense.
Yeah, I mean, definitely if, if you're living in Lunenburg like me, there's a few things that I can't get elsewhere, but like I think that's a really important thing is that just for how much it changed because like when I first moved away it would have been 16 years ago and then I moved home 6 years ago. So I didn't really experience Nova Scotia until I was in my 30s.
Yeah.
And but it's fascinating how I always felt like the narrative when I was coming out of university was that you had to give something up to stay. You almost had to sacrifice experiences to
Yeah.
stay. Um, and what I'd say now is like, especially in Halifax, like you don't really have to sacrifice a lifestyle to be by living here. Like there's so much that we never had even 10 years ago. It's really, really fascinating.
Definitely. And what I always loved about Halifax, and what I still love about it and actually say to people outside of the region is that Halifax is such a great city because it has the best of a capital. So because if you think about it, what's next is Montreal. Of course, we have Charlottetown and St. John's and St. John and all the other cities that are great, but they're not as big, of course. Whereas with Halifax, it's also not as big, but because it's the main city, you get all of those big capital city things. It's the center of everything, but you don't have to do the big city downsides like you would with Toronto, sky high rental prices. I don't know. I mean, traffic problems, but not as bad as you have out there. So I think that it has really the best of all worlds in that sense, which is really cool.
Yeah, it's how do you find it to sort of pop in a few times a year to sort of see your province like in those intervals? Because it's like it's one thing when we're living here and seeing it, but for you, you go a few months and then you come home and you go a few months and come home. Like, how has that looked for you from a progression standpoint over the last few years, watching things advance here?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think in terms of like restaurants and just city development, there's been so much visible city development over the past couple of years, so I think that's really cool to see. Yeah, my best friend is a bit of a foodie, so I've also had some very good experiences on the restaurant scene in Halifax as well. And then sometimes there's also the things that don't change, like for example, going to the cottage or going to a hike at Duncan's Cove or wherever it may be. I mean, there are too many to name, too many good spots, or Hurdles Beach, for example. But yeah, you just go there all the time. Also, even Mahone Bay, for example, has always been beautiful. So it changes to a degree, but it's also just consistently great. So I think it's also nice to see, yeah, the changes, but also that it stays the same.
Consistently great sounds like a great marketing tagline for the province. We're just consistently great.
Consistently great. Yeah, exactly. And not like the most and not the least, just
just
consistently
We're just
great.
yeah, we started as being great and we've just consistently been great.
Yeah.
I like it. Um, so I do want to go back again to talking about so when you made the first move over to Mount Allison, so that's the getting away from home, not getting away, but moving away from home and sort of testing that out, and then you go right to the next to a big thing where you go London. So what led to that decision to make the move across the ocean, across the pond to London to start your career there?
Yeah, it was really kind of it started out as a gap year plan. So I had these, the opportunities that you have post grad, of course, one of which is moving to Toronto and getting a job. Um, and I actually had a couple of other opportunities in New Brunswick as well. So there were options, but I really wanted to travel. And I had this kind of European wanderlust specifically that I couldn't stifle with just a backpacking trip. So I thought London was a perfect happy medium because not only is it the gateway to European travel, but I would also be able to further my career and get a big girl job, not just, uh, working at something that I didn't want to necessarily keep doing for my entire career. And it was also a big city. So another, possibility of something that I hadn't necessarily experienced before, but is, yeah, not Toronto or not Vancouver or Montreal or whatever other big city there were on offer. So yeah, that's what led me to London. Also English speaking, definite perk, and ended up getting a job that I really loved. I worked as a recruitment agent for a while, or for an agency in recruitment. I thought I wanted to be a recruiter, but turned out I like more of the business development side of things anyway. But that was a great learning experience and really cool to do it in the city of London, walking past St. Paul's Cathedral every day and that sort of thing. And in your early 20s as well, you're happy to live in the city center of London in a teeny tiny bedroom for an astronomical amount of money. So it was a great time to be able to live that experience as well.
No, that's amazing. It is funny just how many I didn't realize until I started down this journey just how many people from Nova Scotia have done that, either from here or who went to university here. And like London has so many people connected to Nova Scotia in it,
Yeah.
and so many of them have said the exact same thing you just said. It's just like it's sort of like that perfect middle ground of wanting to get out and see the world, experience a major city, but also feels not that far from home at the same time. So
Yeah. Oh, it used to be easy to, well, I think it still is. You can just fly over there in like 5 hours. It's when people from Europe find out that that's the flight, they think, oh, are you from the West Coast, Vancouver, whatever. And I say, no, 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 it's like a 4.5 hour flight from Dublin or something like that. Yeah, they're shocked.
yeah, the Heathrow Halifax direct is an easier flight than most I do in Canada. Like
Definitely.
it's not the time, especially going over. Like, and honestly, the time difference isn't that big of a deal for me. It's just like you're just gate to gate. It's nice and simple. It's a relaxing flight. Like I don't think people realize just how easy it is to get back and
No,
forth
it's true.
between
And
Halifax and London.
it's way, well, not just to say cheap, but flying domestically in Canada is so astronomically expensive. It's actually somewhat reasonable, I think. And I know we've talked about this before, but that's why I really see that it's such a pity that there aren't more mainland European destinations coming into Halifax. Well, specifically Amsterdam, because that would make my life a lot easier. But I really see because people in Europe, when they go to Canada or when they think Canada, they go to Toronto and then they go to Algonquin National Park, which I've never been, but I'm sure it's beautiful. But to have accessibility and promotion towards places like Nova Scotia, PEI, Newfoundland, I think that Europeans miss out on so much that could be so accessible because the links aren't necessarily there. So I hope that in the future, yeah, Halifax will be a little bit more on the transport link itinerary for many.
Yeah, we've definitely talked about that over coffee in Bedford is the loss of some of those direct routes from Halifax into Europe was tough and but I think there's so much opportunity there to better link Nova Scotia into the world because I am kind of curious to hear your perspective of having lived in London now in Amsterdam, what when you tell people where you're from in Canada, like do people know about Nova Scotia and if they do, like what's their perception, or if they don't, like what do you tell them?
So it's so funny. I get the same answer every time. So there's a few variations. One is I've literally never heard of that. The second is Halifax, right? And I say, yes. How did you know? And they said, oh, I flew over it going to New York. And then the third, which is one of the most common, I say, I'm from Nova Scotia. And then they say, oh, it's really cold there, isn't it? Like all snowy all the time. And I don't know why, but Nova Scotia has this somehow really Arctic sound to it, apparently, to other people. But then I always say, no, it can be 30 degrees in the summer. And sometimes it's even better summers than the Netherlands, which is definitely true. It's much more consistently great to go back to that. Yeah, much more consistent, not as much precipitation, and you can put away your winter coat with good confidence as opposed to still hanging it out for the odd blustery day that we get here. So Nova Scotia summers are definitely not Arctic by any means, usually.
Yeah, it's I'm always surprised by that because like I mean, so I was actually born in the Arctic, so I was born in Nunavut, and so I was like
Oh, I didn't
compare
know that.
yeah, compare I know everyone's like Nova Scotia. I'm like not born and raised. I was born to expats and moved back home when I was just a little kid. Um and I've gone back to Iqaluit. That's Arctic.
Yeah,
this
yeah.
this is pretty nice, and I
It's one
think
of the most southern parts.
I used to get that from everyone I knew in Ontario when we were moving back from there, and they're like, "Oh, how are you gonna handle the winters?" And it's like, I know I just said it's snowing out, but it's also gonna be 14 degrees on the weekend. But, like, my winters here have been way easier than my winters in Southern Ontario. Like,
Oh, definitely.
and I don't know where that perception comes from, because yeah, like, it's gorgeous here, like, yeah, it can be a little bit cold and wet in the spring, and is it, like, 45 degrees or something? No, which is great, and the fall is amazing, so, yeah, it's weird that that's the perception.
Yeah, and I would love as well because it's so funny whenever I see advertisements for Nova Scotia and even Cape Breton and Newfoundland and places like this, I always see advertisements for cities. And as I've just gone on about how much I love Halifax, but as a European, I think they're not necessarily looking for history and culture as much as they are the nature
Ah,
is what they
okay.
call it. So I think as well that when foreigners, or I say foreigners, but yeah, particularly Europeans, if I can say that as a vast generalization, um, Canada, the appeal of Canada, and particularly I think what Nova Scotia can offer is really that hiking, the outdoors, the wildness. Because, yeah, here in the Netherlands, you can go for a forest walk, but I mean, there's people around everywhere, there's no animals, and there's probably someone's house a 20-minute walk away. Whereas in Canada, I mean, driving on the Cobequid Pass, for example, is like a tourist attraction because I got stuck on the Cobequid Pass once. So I was going back to Mount A in that one of those snowstorms that was like on the news. One of the most terrifying moments of my life. I was the first car in the line, white knuckled, just thinking to myself, okay, the two sides of me on the other sides are cliffs. So good luck. So that's a cool adventure for a European, I think.
That's really yeah, that's really interesting. I guess, having not lived in Europe myself, I haven't really thought about that. Because yeah, I mean, I guess even dropping somebody into sort of a contained space like Keji, if you
Oh my
go
gosh, yeah.
would
The
be
dark
like
zone.
yeah, like, yeah, the dark sky zone there and, yeah, some of the walking trails and everything in the backcountry. I mean, I think about my backyard, like, my f
Totally.
like, my family's property, you walk, like, 5 minutes back into the woods, and, like, you're now very far away from any other human being. So that's interesting that that would be the main appeal.
Yeah, it's so funny actually. That reminds me, you say your backyard. When my fiance comes back and tells people about his highlights, that's one of the things we back onto Admiral, like Eagles Rock area.
Okay.
And he always says that, yeah, you can just walk right out the door and you're in a park and it's, you can just walk there and go hiking. And I'm like, yeah, yeah, but we can go to more places that are more interesting and real trails, but the most exciting part for him is the fact that it's right outside your door.
That's really interesting. So, I mean, so I'm kind of curious. So, I mean, obviously, you just kind of said something there, but for you having a fiance who's from Europe and having lived there for a while, what has being surrounded in that culture and talking to people there, what has that done for your appreciation for Nova Scotia more broadly?
Yeah, I mean, I think the people is always what I really miss the most. I mean, it's not really any surprise to any Nova Scotian, I think, but just the fact that people are genuinely warm, friendly, interested. And I know that people, whenever they see someone like me coming around and, you know, I, as a Nova Scotian, am friendly and asking, how are you? And all these types of things. And a lot of people think about it as, yeah, somewhat kind of American stereotype of, you're just being over enthusiastic and everything's amazing and all this type of stuff. But actually, in Nova Scotia, when you do talk to a server or a shop person or a grocery store person, they really want to have a chat and they're genuinely bringing themselves to the table. And I think that that's rare to find anywhere else, honestly. So I always miss that. Yeah, the fact that everyone's just friendly and willing for a chat, but are also real about it. And I also do miss the nature as well. So like he does, I mean, going out, having the ocean right there, breathing in that freshness. Um, yeah, that little bit of wildness is also something to miss. And I never thought I would say this, but walking up hills, like, and in the Netherlands specifically, it's very flat. And when I go home and go for a walk outside, my, like, yeah, back area is on fire because my muscles are like weak from never being used.
Oh, I mean, just walking to my meetings downtown Halifax, I get my heart rate up. It's just
Oh,
like
yeah.
just trying to climb the hills. So yeah, we certainly have those. Um, so I'm curious. You mentioned about the friendliness, the talkativeness. Like that is definitely it. For you in your professional life, you sort of specialize into partnerships. And so I'm kind of curious, what is it about how how much of being a Nova Scotian do you think has factored into be doing what you do and being good at what you do?
Well, I'd like to say not 100%,
Mm.
but don't know if I can claim that fully. But I mean, you're in the exact same line of work, so I think you know it very well. It makes it so much easier when you're generally personable. And I always say that I make friends for a living, so I'm making relationships between companies, particularly in the technology space, where sometimes conversation can be a little bit more difficult than in other industries as well. So I noticed it from the very early days of my career, even back to the recruitment days, is, you pick up the phone, you're genuinely interested, you just want to have a chat and you can talk about literally anything. People really warm to that. And especially when they get the feeling of your authenticity, it just makes it so easy to connect with people. And that makes business go so much more smoothly. So I think, turning back to where I am at now, um, in partnerships, yeah, that's what my whole job is all about. So if I didn't have that gift of the gab and that ability to connect with people from all walks of life, all ages, I think that that's a definite real benefit and, yeah, definitely a success factor, I would say.
Yeah, I think there is working in partnerships and dealing with other people that are in the space. I mean, there's a real clear divide between people that are good at like the strategy and being able to talk and things like that, and then people who are able to create like authentic relationships and authentic connections. Like those are two very different things, and both can be successful in their own ways. But like for me, I really think there is something to being able to create a person to person connection that goes bigger to company as you go down the road. Um,
Definitely.
but I really do think that is a bit of a superpower of ours across the East Coast. It's not. I mean, my mom's Newfoundlander as well. Like they're pretty good at it too.
That must
So
be the key thing, is mix in a Newfoundlander with some Nova Scotian and you get a partnerships person, I guess. I don't know.
that maybe that's what all the industry associations have been working on. Create the perfect person, Nova Scotians and Newfoundlanders,
Yeah.
and uh, but yeah, so it's across the East Coast. I think there is that ability to create an authentic relationship, which is I think really special because I've seen the opposite, and it's painful to watch.
Definitely. And I think as well, another piece that goes along with Nova Scotian, I've recently started working for myself. So I now consult companies independently on their partnerships and how to leverage those partnerships to grow their business, just to give a bit of background there. But that entrepreneurial spirit as well. I mean, I see this in a lot of Nova Scotians where you have that small town grit sort of thing. My grandfather, my dad's father, was the Main Street store owner in Lewisburg. So he was the guy, everyone knew him, but that entrepreneur gene, I guess, was passed down through onto me as well. And I think that that is very common in a lot of Nova Scotians. Small business is very common. People know their customers, they care about their customers. So I think that thirst for building something and want to make something grow and help it be better is also something that a lot of Nova Scotians have in common, and not necessarily just in the business world, but also in the community space as well.
Yeah, so I think that's a really good point, and I think it's also maybe sometimes a bit of an undersold side of us. I think there's such an entrepreneurial spirit here, and I don't feel like we've talked about it a lot as a province. Like we kind of just we just do it. Like, but I feel like it's just been the last few years where you're starting to see the region talk about itself as potentially a hot spot for creating business and for entrepreneurs that wasn't really talked about in the same way when I was younger. So I think it's I love that you highlighted that because that's something that we probably should be celebrating a lot more for our region.
Definitely. And I think also going back to the partnerships piece, that's also some real potential that I see, because if it actually is also the case in the Netherlands. The Netherlands is such a small country. It's 17 million people, which is a lot, yeah, less small than Nova Scotia is for about the same surface area. So a little bit of trivia there. It's as if you if you times the population of Nova Scotia by 17, you get the Netherlands. It's crazy. Or if you just have the Netherlands and you only have Amsterdam and remove everybody else, it's kind of the same.
And that's funny because we're stressing about the idea of doubling our population, times it by 17. There, that's terrifying.
Yeah, but all the wilderness goes away, bear in mind. You still have some
Yes.
farmland, but you don't get much else. But yeah, it's really interesting because the mentality towards business in the Netherlands is also very much, we're a small country. There's not enough business here to sustain us. We need to look outwards. That also, you see it in a lot of ways in the Dutch culture. So everybody speaks English because they say, oh, nobody speaks Dutch, so we'll just speak English. But I think it's really interesting because Dutch companies, I mean, they're very innovative, but they're also really good at exporting. And I think that that's also something where in Nova Scotia, we have a lot of good brains, especially with the university, and there's a lot of good ideas. There's a lot of good technology, and I think that one thing that we can do as Nova Scotians is remember that the market that we should be selling to is not other Nova Scotians. We should be working on bringing this outside to the world, and also recognizing that we can be a very viable player on the global stage.
I mean, I used to work in export development, so that was you just hit a perfect key message. But it is really true, and to reach the scale that you need to reach as if say it's a technology company, you have to look outward. You have to look to bigger markets, and you get really good at that, and sort of bake that into the foundation of what you're building. Um, so I mean I mean I think we're getting there as a region, and we've
Definitely.
always as a as a nautical province, we've always kind of had to have an outward mentality and going out. But I think really still lots of work for us to do on that side of things. So yeah, no, that's really interesting. So I'm looking at the time, and I want to make sure I'm respectful
Yes.
of how much time I take of yours. So if we can kind of maybe move into sort of some of the lighter things. So you said about how some of your friends in Halifax and things like you got some foodie friends and everything. Are there some spots in around Bedford or the HRM more broadly that you're constantly kind of thinking about that you'd love to be able to, sit down at the table and have that right now?
Well, the chicken burger, of
Obviously.
course,
Yeah.
as we've discussed. And I think honestly, the one that comes to mind, it's a place that I go every time without fail when I go back to Halifax. Actually, my friend's dad is the owner. That's Joe McInnes. There's a couple of different spots of his. He's a total pro. I love all of his places. But Dirty Nelly's is a Halifax institution. It is so much fun, good, great quality. And whenever I come home, I always have to get a Caesar from Dirty Nelly's, because another thing that if you tell people from abroad what clamato juice is, they don't really take to it. They get a look of disgust on their face. They think you're insane. But yeah, a Dirty Nelly's Caesar goes a long way. So that's always a stop on the on the trail when I'm at home. And I don't eat this in a restaurant, but it's worth a mention. I would never buy it in a restaurant if I could help it, but lobster boiled in the pot,
Yeah.
ideally like on the driveway or something, dipped in butter, sleeves rolled up. That's definitely what I miss.
That's a very Nova Scotia answer. That's excellent. No, I will admit, I'm even as somebody who grew up here, Clamato juice. I don't know. I think it's
Oh,
a you.
no, it's so good.
I don't know. I don't know. It's even for me, like having been surrounded. There's something about the idea of it. I'm very happy that Dirty Nelly's makes a good Caesar, but it's a tough one for me.
Acquired taste. You've got a couple of years to keep it going.
Yeah, you make it sound like you're advising some young guy. I'm like this old guy that's just like, "Nah, I'm set in my ways."
There's always time for change. I have faith in you.
Uh,
You'll
this
get there, you'll get there.
this has turned into a very motivational podcast.
Enjoy Caesars, a how-to guide.
I look forward to your masterclass. Um, so I guess we'll use that to jump off into because you kind of mentioned you always go there. So let's talk about what you would do on a trip home. So we'll end it off with the question that ends off everything. If I'm giving you 24 hours back home in Nova Scotia, how are you packing those hours?
So this is such a hard question because the thing is, the cottage, it's my favorite place on earth, really. So if really I had just 24 hours, especially if it was a sunny day, 24 of 24 would be spent at the cottage in that dark sky zone, roasting marshmallows, swimming, reading. I could go on.
Mhm.
But if I really have to break it up, because of course there's a lot of other things to do, I would probably start it at the cottage, go for a kayak ride when it's still calm in the morning out on the lake. Then, as you mentioned, was a possibility, I would teleport myself to the valley for a wine tour. So I would go over probably my usual spots are Lightfoot and Wolfville, Luckett's, Benjamin Bridge as well. So enjoying some times with friends there and then go out to the city and have dinner on the waterfront somewhere, maybe the Stubborn Goat or Peacock. The new places on the waterfront there are also so amazing. It's so cool. And then yeah, and the night at Dirty Nelly's with a live band, some live music, heave away, a couple rounds would be great.
That's a pretty solid day. And you mentioned the valley and the wine, and I will ask this last one. And I don't know if it's come up in your life, but do Europeans realize that we have like a pretty impressive wine industry here? If they know about Nova Scotia, would anyone ever think of Nova Scotia as a wine region in Canada?
Not yet. I think it's hopefully getting more and more. I know that's also another thing that my fiance tends to tell people. He's a really big fan of the Lightfoot Whites. So shout out to them. One of my friends also works at Lightfoot, so we've spent quite a lot of time there as well. But yeah, I think that there's a way to go, and I think a lot of it has to do with I don't know if it's volume or just export, but I think yeah, it's not necessarily widely available, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. But yeah, I think there's so much potential, and it's definitely something that I say and that I share with people who are interested because it's a very good time.
It really is, and we do have. I think some of it is capacity, and we do have a couple of those early adopters, like Benjamin Bridge and Lightfoot and Wolf. I think both have distributors in the UK.
Yeah.
So like that's really helped their sort of ability to think export. But yeah, like I usually have not been that much of a wine drinker. I'm usually like a beer drinker. But for some reason, I'm like addicted to Nova 7 right now.
Oh yeah. A
And
classic.
yeah, which came up in the conversation with Olivia when we were chatting about Benjamin Bridge. And I think from those conversations, I keep buying it now, and I'm just like, oh my god, this is so good.
Yeah, it's
So
super good and
yeah,
homegrown.
it's
That
hope so
makes it
like
sweeter.
exactly. The world needs more of that. So, perfect. Well, Carolyn, thank you so much for taking the time to come on, talk about home, and share a little bit about it. I really enjoyed it, and I'm looking forward to when you're back so we can meet up in person again.
Definitely. It's always better in person. But thanks so much for having me on. I really appreciate it. And always good to talk from someone from home.
Awesome. Thanks so much. Have a great day.
You too. Thanks.
Global Bluenosers is a Some Good Media and Entertainment production. It's hosted, edited, and produced by me, Sean Meister. All the music used on the show is by Lunenburg-based band Black Matilda. You can find the show on Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn, so give us a follow. If you enjoyed the show today, I'd really appreciate a 5-star review. And make sure you also subscribe to the show so you never miss an episode, especially some of those surprise bonus ones that are bound to come. Thanks for listening, and I can't wait to welcome you back again next week.